All right. So, hi, Bella. How are you?
I had this amazing cancellation, so I was just biking back from the beach, and I just felt, I've been feeling a lot like that the last few days. What do you do every day that is quality of life? Um,
Mm.
so yeah, and I've been saying it for decades. I've been saying, you know, when you go to bed every day, you want to feel like that day was worth it. And I've had so many periods of my life before when I was in school, for example, where I had deadlines. And I was feeling like, oh, these 2 weeks, they're kind of wasted time. I'm just going to be preparing for this exam or for this presentation. And even with work, as a consultant, sometimes I was feeling like that. Okay, it's just a race, and I have these many clients or something. So I promised myself to not have that. And then I still find myself in that tendency of, kind of just becoming this little bit of a robot. And, I'm a generator, so I have a lot of energy. So I have to check myself. Am I in that kind of just the way of doing things that isn't completely aware and that doesn't naturally pause? And then when life gives us pauses, that's what I feel is so precious. Like when you have an hour or two that you didn't expect, how are you using that gift? That it's that you have right there. That awareness is with me, and also really as a generator, when I go to bed and I feel like the day has been worth it, like that satisfaction is. I guess that's what Ra was speaking about, the signature, the signature of each aura type. And for the generator, it is success. No, is it satisfaction? Success is what's success? That's projector,
Hmm.
and that's also when you trust the body, when you trust in the vehicle. When I sit here, I have an hour and I look out the window and I see the sun and the palm trees that are like the leaves. Like it's my body that says, I want that. I want a piece of that. I want to feel. So I feel, it is a response that comes from the body. And I feel like living from the mind, I mean, we know that, and it's kind of a cliche, but when we are in the experiment and we start to really understand that when we give the authority to the body instead of the mind, life becomes more simple and more pleasurable. So
Mm. That's great. I love that you're bringing that in because we're in a kind of like this 2 week, maybe 3 week even transition period with the solar transits that has a really powerful synergistic effect on us. And the transit that we've just come from, uh, gate 35, is about the shadow of hunger, at least in terms of what we're focusing on here in lunar alchemy. We're looking at transforming those lower frequency expressions that are coming literally through our DNA and determining the reality that we experience. And what you're talking about makes me think of how when we engage on a daily basis with an expression of our aliveness, our kind of our inner dreaming innocence, we experience that state of adventure that is the gift of that particular gate. And what's amazing to me is how that gateway is leading us into this new gateway where we've just kind of landed today, where we're going to be looking at the shadow of dominance through gate 45. And I'm really excited about this particular gate because in all of the consciousness work that I've done in my life over, the last, I don't know, 13 years or so, I continually meet with people who have inside a dream of a transformation of society, where society could move away from this system of competition, domination, to move away from that and come into a greater form of deep cooperation, where the needs of every individual are taken care of, where the abundance of the resources that humanity has access to is allowed to benefit each person, rather than how our society's been experiencing it as very uneven, huge gaps in wealth, huge gaps in access to education, to the necessities of life. So many people are interested in this possibility for human society, and here we are, right in the gateway that is all about this. And we're just a couple days away from a new moon, which, if you didn't realize, is also known as, at least in our current, what's going to happen this week, as a solar eclipse. If it hadn't quite occurred to you yet, a solar eclipse is just a new moon that happens in the middle of the day or during some part when the sun is up. As the moon lines up and passes in front of our view of the sun, it gets either partially or totally blotted out. So for those of you in the northeastern United States, you're lucky. If you're in Europe, I think you're going to be able to get a good view of this, at least of the partial eclipse. But to be honest, the best place to go, if you can get a reservation to stay with some elves and Santa Claus at the North Pole, that's where you want to watch this from. So that's coming up this week. So I'm really excited about this particular gateway, because there's so many elements that are being brought together and are looking at this shadow of dominance. And I just want to say right off the bat, if you know what your gene key profile is, or if you have your human design chart, I urge you to take a look and discover if you have that 45th activated in your chart. And I'm sure we'll look at where that is and everything and what it looks like. Because what I was talking about, these movements of consciousness, if you're somebody who's been to Burning Man or hears about what's been going on there, a large part of an experience in that festival is an experimentation with the gift and city frequencies of this particular gateway. That process of gifting that goes on there, where no money is used, is a direct experiment with this particular gate. So anyways, welcome to our discussion, and let's get into it. Bella, where do you want to start?
Let's show the chart. Probably is a good
Yeah,
place to start.
here you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I like to look at it like this, because we can see both how things are in the sky, right? And we can see how they are in the body graph, and we also have this table, we could say, with all the planets. So you were speaking about the 45, and we can even see, so the way that the planets are moving, and this is geocentric, so the way that the planets are moving, if these are the constellation in the sky, the way that they are moving is counterclockwise. So we have the moon here. The moon moves it moves through all the constellations in 28 days. So now we are a few days before the eclipse, and we have it here just beginning. It's been in Taurus for the last few days, and it's now coming in here to the first Gemini gate. Or actually, in the 8th, it already changes to Gemini. So earlier today, it changed to Gemini. Now it's in 20, and it's going to come, like you were saying, the Earth and the moon are going to be together, and that's where the moon can actually. It looks like it's how do you say, like, it's, I can't find the words. The moon is. You say in English, it's
aligned. No,
I mean,
that's
yeah,
not it.
it's like covering, maybe. Yeah, covering is a good word. The moon is covering the sun. It looks like, but it's just because of the distance. And that is also really interesting because the moon is so small, right? Relatively, but it has the perfect size and the perfect distance so that it can actually cover the sun. Like that is like some sacred geometry right there. It's like, it's incredible that it can line up the way that it is going to line up this week.
Yeah.
Um,
On that, I just want to interject that this is traditionally the ring of fire type of solar eclipse, where the moon is far enough away on its elliptical orbit that once you reach the total eclipse, the entire ring surrounding it, the corona of the sun, you could see the whole thing, if you were in the right place on the planet, which I think is honestly the North Pole, as I mentioned. But if you're in the northeastern United States, if you get up to watch the sunrise, you may get a special treat of being able to see this. The sun is going to come up like two horns, like a bull's horns, because the moon will just be in the right place to make that part of it visible. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, and I feel, if we're going to look at what's going to be activated, I believe, so it's going to be in the 19th degree of Gemini. So we have 30 degrees in Gemini. It's going to be in the 19th. I would say if we're in the second line today, we're probably going to be in the fourth line when the eclipse happens. So here we are going to be in the 45 in the fourth line. We're going to have the 16th in the sixth line. We were mentioning last time that the 45 and the 16, I think we were at least, is the codon ring of prosperity. So the shadows of dominance and indifference is what makes the power stay with the few that have the money, and then the masses are, not having a life where they can pursue their dreams. It's just for the few that have the money. And we're going to have this, like, everything here lining up in the 45. And what it feels like also in the fourth line, it does feel like it has to do with a new leadership. When we look, that's the other thing I was going to say. We're going to have, we have this, the square between Saturn, the old, and Uranus, the new. So the tension between the old and the new. And I feel in the 45, it's all about leadership. And it's a leadership that has been very selfish, me and mine, or my family, my tribe, my people. And it hasn't looked, further than that. But now we are in the 16, in the sixth line, in the nodes. So our trajectory is collective. 16 is collective. If the 45 is tribal, the 16 is collective, and it says global, like we, the collective, humanity. And it's the sixth line, it sees beyond. And it's inviting what I feel, that fourth line of the 45, saying, come back to the heart, come back to truth in you. And then the leadership that we are inviting, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same dominance, not the same indifference. There is something new. And it's almost like, at the end of the day, Uranus has to win, because we discovered Saturn first and felt like that was the limits of the universe. But we're always discovering that this universe doesn't really have an end. So Uranus won, you could say. And that is in Taurus. And Taurus is the material plane. And it's building something that is stable, something that, it's that building in the material plane. And that's even if Uranus doesn't really maybe like to be there, because it is a little bit too slow and a little bit too stable. Still, it's like, that's what he has to work with right now. And that's what the new leadership is going to be. We're going to have, in a world that is very changing, and some things are going to blow up for sure in the coming years, and some systems are going to fall down. But if you come back to the heart, if we see both me, mine, my family, and the global, the bigger perspective, if we are versatile in that, that's for me where it comes. And I also see this channel that is activated in 9 and the 52, which is determination in small steps. If we take small steps, like logical small steps, we can do it. We call the 9 the mountaineer in the 64 doors, because it has it has that goal, you know. And it's not really about the goal, it's about the journey too. The mountaineer loves to climb and hike, so the journey is the goal, and at the same time, you know, it's focus. It is in, it's hiking, it's there, it knows that there are top mountain tops, and that's probably, with all this energy in Gemini, that is very logical. You know, with all that, I believe we also need to have a focus. We need to be determined. We need to be logical, because we've also seen this tension with Neptune now in these, as Mercury is retrograde, which is a little bit the fantasy, the veil. But I feel there is a focus on what's logical, what works in my life. What do you do with that hour when you have a cancellation, or, you know, something opens up? How, you know, how good are you at using that? Or are you just like floating around and not having a direction, not seeing the mountain, and not, so those are questions that I feel are constructive to ask this week. So I would love
So
to hear you, John. Yeah.
yeah, I wanna tie in all that you're talking about with this process of lunar alchemy that we're engaging in, where the solar transit, the moon, every day, every night, whenever the moon is coming over it through our sky, it's reflecting the light and the energies of the sun. So the gate of the sun is, those energies are being reflected off of the moon, regardless of where the moon is in this 28-day cycle. And since our last lunar alchemy session, there's been an entire transit of another gate. So part of what I was talking about at the very beginning is that we actually met on Monday for our lunar alchemy members. Last lunar alchemy session occurred around gate 16, where we were talking about that channel of the talent and all of those things that are going into our personal self-expression. And it forms a codon ring together, that one plus gate 45, where the sun is now, to form the codon ring of prosperity. And it combines this sort of like unique individual expression with the ability to harmonize the responsibility and contributions of a society, to spread that amongst the individuals, so that all can benefit from the gifts that each individual brings. And in between that time and now, that transit of the 35 was about the shadow of hunger, in terms of what was the moon illuminating for us. The shadow of hunger drives human beings to create externally, to achieve things externally. And while that's not a bad thing, you know, being able to create systems and structures in our world that benefit people is a wonderful process that we've been in for a long time. However, the shadow frequency of that particular hunger tends to drive us into the shadow frequency of gate 45 as well, to where we're unable to experience fulfillment. And so in order to continue moving down that path, we move in a state of competition with our neighbors, with our friends, with whoever is in our community. We're in competition with them, and it eventually leads to this hierarchy structure where there's one dominant person at the top, or one dominant group at the top, making the decisions for all those that are not at that high of a position of dominance. So this movement from 16 through the 35 to the 45 is this just massive transformational opportunity for human society in the way that it's manifested right now. The path into the gift frequencies of that 35 is through adventure, which involves raising the frequencies into your heart space. What makes you feel alive? And when you look at this movement from the 16 of that individual personal expression of a unique gift into that adventurous connection to that heart center, followed by a gift from the gate 45 of synergy, where all things, all components are working synergistically in support and in resonance with each other. We have this massive basis for a completely new version of society, a new version of social interaction, a new version of social organization that can radically increase the possibilities for every individual who's engaging with it. And for our Lunar Alchemy members, the quantum healing transmission for gate 35 will be posted tonight, so you can engage with that tonight as you like. But that's, Bella, that's what I'm really looking at. And when you're looking at these kind of movements of the other planets around, I think what's happening in our current state is it's giving us these clues about the directions where we can focus. Those of us who have certain areas of our human design chart that have activations in them, if you have that channel from 9 to 52, or you have the channel from 16 to 48, either all the way or in some form, or that 35 to the 36, we're not going to try to cover all of this, but all of these things are moving together to support us. And particularly if you're watching and you happen to know that you have that 45th gate activated in your system, you are one of the key components of the transition that humanity is going through from this system that's built on domination of others into a system where we can be in a form of unification of human progress, where we support each other, where we receive support from everyone around us. I mean, it's really a powerful particular gate to have in terms of your role within society at this time, because all of these elements are in active transition for everything. We're seeing all kinds of societal structures being challenged and to some degree dismantled. And we need all of those things in order to replace the things that are falling apart. Bella mentioned the kind of separation of that this shadow of domination causes. My family, my tribe, my business must prosper over your tribe, your business. I don't want your tribe to come forth and make decisions for me. I only want to follow the rules that my own tribe makes. We are seeing this at an extraordinarily exaggerated level in American society. Just this year, January 6th, there was an uprising at the Capitol around our democratic system and how it functions, based on disagreements about who's going to have the dominance, who deserves to have the dominance based on the rules that all of us agreed to. It's really coming to a head right now. So,
what you're saying with the tribe as well, we have this opposition between, we see in the 56, we have Mars And then right over on the other side, we have Pluto. And both these, they are ruled by the Scorpio is a ruler. So they have to do with death. They have to do with war. They have to do with upheaval. And there is something here as well, when we look at, here we have Pluto. What are the and 60 is about structures and limitations. What structures need to like fall apart? What is it that has to die in order to transform so that we can live in a way that is more responsible? Capricorn, for example. And then here, I feel like when we have the 56, we're still in the Cancer energy with Mars. Goes back to the tribe, my family, and also in the family structure, what is distraction that we're kind of just doing autopilot the way that family has worked, and what is true enrichment, and what is the immature masculine in the family, and what is a higher octave of true enrichment where the masculine fights for what's worth fighting for, and what's worth continuing with. So but of course, Mars and Pluto and Scorpio, and we have this opposition. So there is tension, and I guess that's what I'm gonna say. There is a lot of tension right now. We have the splenic center completely open. Splenic center has to do with fears. So there are no fears activated, not the fear of tomorrow. Like all these fears that we have here are not activated. So I would say, especially, we know 3 days before an eclipse and 3 days after. It's not like the eclipse happens and it's 10 minutes and it's over. It's really an energy. It's really like now the moon is joining, and then it's not just a snap of fingers. So I would say it is to be aware the 3 days before, the 3 days after, and not just do things, not just jump into things that can be dangerous. I would say it's a awareness. Don't make any bold decisions, any bold moves. More about awareness than movement and like jumping into things, because yeah, it feels like with this complete and open spleen, we can kind of come to a moment where I feel like, oh, I've had enough of this. And then we try to do something in a drastic way. And I believe it's not to do it in a drastic way. I would say sit still in the boat, watch, be aware, observe. And then as we're moving past both the eclipse, and then on next Monday, we're going to have this exact square between Uranus and Saturn, the old and the new. Like let that pass, and kind of prepare yourself for the new, whatever new it is that you want to bring in, and whatever old you want to let go of. But no drastic things that then you look back and you're like, how could I take that big of a risk in all this super intense energy? That would be my advice for the next week, even to start just until the beginning of next week. Then we can speak about it again, next Tuesday.
Well, I'll be curious to see. I mean, I'm always curious to see how these things are experienced. In my human design chart, I have everything defined except for the ajna and the head center. So, when I look at these influences that are coming from the planetary structures, the cosmic bodies, I rarely feel influenced. I mean, that makes sense because, like all those centers are defined for me. So when we go through these like planetary movements that, oh, there's all this tension over here, and there's, don't take big risks right now because this planet is over there and stuff. I think while some people I know can feel those movements intensely and can be incredibly benefited by saying like, oh, I see what's going on. Like, this is a good time for me to remain aware. Some people don't get any of that experience. And when they're looking at, well, how do I relate to all this stuff? It just doesn't make any sense. However, one thing that I do want to share that is a reflection of everything that you just shared, Bella, is what is the possibility of a new moon, and particularly of a solar eclipse? When we're looking at the lunar cycle, moving through all of these constellations. The constellations are representatives of human archetype possibilities that are expressed through all of these 64 possibilities of energetic expression through our systems. And because the moon makes that entire cycle it goes through all of it, it has the potential to carry with it the reflection of all of the human archetypes that we can embody within our current form. And when you come to a new moon, the moon is in an alignment with the planet and the sun to where the moon is not reflecting any light to the surface that it's rising over. And in that circumstance, the illumination from the sun is not having a reflection of that separated aspect of self, meaning the entire lunar cycle, there's light being shown upon some part of our inner nature that feels separated. We can call that the shadow self. You can call that the subconscious or the unconscious. People are working on developing an awareness of these parts of ourselves in order to evolve. So when a new moon occurs, there is no illumination on those aspects of our being. We have this moment where it's kind of like we can hit a reset button, where all of the influences, no matter what they are on us, whether they're coming from the movement of the planets or they're coming from the things going on at work, the relationship you have with your boss, or relationships that you have that are in a state of transition or in a state of challenge. You have an opportunity during a new moon to hit the reset button, because you can make choices from this sort of state where you're not controlled by those shadow elements that are being illuminated. So whether a situation in your life is triggering some aspect of you that is kind of unconscious or not becomes irrelevant for this period of the new moon. You get to actually dig down deep and make a choice that you're completely deciding consciously. Now, when you have that going on, along with the sun, light being shined around that or to it, being blackened out by it, it's like a super reset where everything gets blacked out. There's no longer a cosmic influence even happening. And you can reach into yourself and make choices and movements of your energy that come from anywhere in the spectrum of these gates. So if you want to continue to experience those certain low frequencies of your life, great, you can choose that. But if you've been in patterns of low frequency experience and you desire something different, you can also choose those gift frequencies like that. And that happens to be the case where now the sun is going to be in gate 45. We're having a new moon passing right in front of the pathway of the sun. So all of the influences from this particular gate, everything having to do with synergy in your experience, where you make a choice to go somewhere and you just, by serendipity, great things happen to you. You can connect with that on purpose during this period. Meaning, if you find yourself having an impulse that you want to follow in terms of this cosmic influence, the potential that you have to be able to create an experience that you desire is radically increased. And while, during this period, Bella was saying, hey, this doesn't mean you need to take great big risks. That's an influence going on from some of the planets. What can happen if you find yourself in a risky situation is that you can let go of the sense of being trapped by that risk that you perceive, meaning you can step away from the riskiness of the experience and invite more synergy into your experience that will be supportive for you. So to me, like, my experience of all of these movements, oftentimes, man, I'm like, I can't even, because I'm an emotional authority, I can't even make a decision quickly enough to catch, by the time I've like responded to all of these movements of the planets, everything's in a different position already anyways. So it doesn't even matter to me to even like look at some of this stuff. Well, I'm an emotional authority, so that's unique to me. Some of you, if you're a splenic authority or you have a sacral authority, you can respond differently to these influences and maybe a lot more presently directly to them. But for me, by the time I've gone through an emotional cycle, Mercury's somewhere else, the moon is somewhere else, the sun is probably somewhere else, because for me, those cycles are usually longer than 24 hours. So a lot of changes happen. But when I hear all of those things, Bella, that you're sharing about these influences going on, I can look at, okay, I may not experience all of these situations popping up for me. However, I do see that with this eclipse going on, there's this possibility to have this massive reset where I can choose a way of being in the circumstances I find myself in that will invite more that can fulfill me and that can feel good to me, to moving me forward on my own path. So I mean, hopefully that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And at the same time, looking back in history, we know that when we look at specific things that have happened and we look at where were the planets, often we can see that similar things are happening when there are similar tensions on the heavens. So I would say probably we shouldn't be surprised in what you're saying, like when there is a complete endarkenment in a way and a reset, we shouldn't be surprised that things can happen in the outer, in society. For me, astrology is actually a science that is pretty precise. So and that would be one reason too, to remain aware, whether you are like active or passive, but to remain aware, because there are tensions that are going to pull things. And it's, when we know that, we can also look at it with, for me, it's also looking with curiosity. What's going to happen? Like, what's the reset? I feel like it's that's interesting. And then of course, I love what you're speaking about, because this is human design, what we're bringing in astrology. We are all unique and differentiated, so the way that you are going to experience this is going to, like John was saying, is going to depend on, are you like, just looking at the body graph, what's linking up for you, where are you, what's your inner authority, all that. So knowing that you, and that's amazing. That's what I feel is, that also makes our conversation here alive, because I have a different experience of reality than you have. And then we can speak about it, not like bulls, but more like Gemini, like not like Taurus, more like Gemini, like learning from each other and understanding what is your experience, what's my experience, how can we live through these things, because life is always going to throw things at us, and how can we respond in a way that is constructive.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a great place to move on to just our discussion with the Lunar Alchemy members. If you've been watching on Facebook, thanks for joining us for our discussion. Lunar Alchemy is this process of alchemizing the shadow frequencies using the transits of the sun, the moon, and the earth as a launching point for how we can individually and collectively evolve together. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please make a comment on the Facebook page and Unlock Your Design. We'll respond to that personally and get you involved with the process. We're going to now move on with our members into responding to some of the comments, questions that they may have brought with them. And we'll also do a quantum healing transmission that assists with the alchemy of the shadow frequencies of our current transit and allows us to really take advantage of the upcoming solar eclipse. So we'll see you all another time. Let's see if I can. Hey, Bella, can we get back to the regular